Captain Sarah Chen walked through the tall purple grass of New Kepler with her rifle ready. The morning sun made the alien world look peaceful, but Sarah knew better. She had been a soldier for 10 years, and peaceful places could turn deadly. In seconds, behind her, 5 other soldiers moved quietly through the grass. They were checking the outer fence of the colony. Yesterday, the sensors had picked up strange signals from this area. Sarah's job was to find out what caused them. Captain, "I see something up ahead," whispered Private Martinez through the radio. He was 20 meters to her left, moving through a patch of blue flowers that grew everywhere on this planet. Sarah stopped and raised her hand. All her soldiers froze. She looked where Martinez was pointing. They're behind a cluster of tall rocks. She could see metal glinting in the sunlight. "It's like equipment," she said quietly into her radio. "Everyone stay low. We move in slow." The 6 humans crept forward. Sarah felt her heart beating faster. In all her years of fighting, she had learned to trust her gut feelings. Right now, her gut was telling her something was very wrong. As they got closer to the rocks, Sarah could see the metal objects clearly. They were not human-made. The surfaces were too smooth, and the colors were wrong. Everything had a silver-blue shine that human technology never had. "Alien tech," she whispered. To her team, "Stay alert." Suddenly, the quiet morning exploded with noise. Bright energy beams shot out from behind the rocks. Sarah dove to the ground as a beam passed right over her head. The grass where she had been standing caught fire. "Contact! Contact!" she yelled. Into her radio, "We have hostiles." More energy beams filled the air. Sarah rolled behind a large boulder and tried to see her attackers. Through the smoke and flashing lights, she saw them. They were tall, maybe 8 feet high, with long arms and legs. Their skin looked like gray metal, and they wore armor that seemed to be part of their bodies. Zephyr and Sarah had seen pictures of them in military training, but never in real life. They were the most dangerous alien race humans had ever met. Their empire had been growing across the galaxy for thousands of years, taking over planet after planet. "Johnson, call for backup," Sarah shouted to her communications specialist. But when she looked around, she saw Johnson lying still behind a rock. A burn mark on his chest showed where an energy beam had hit him. Martinez was firing his rifle at the aliens, but his bullets seemed to bounce off their armor. "Captain, our weapons are not working." Sarah cursed. She had been afraid of this. Human bullets and energy weapons were not strong enough to hurt Zephyrian battle armor. The aliens had been fighting wars for thousands of years, longer than humans had even existed. More Spherians appeared from behind other rocks. Sarah counted at least 20 of them. Her small patrol team was badly outnumbered. "Fall back to the ridge," she ordered. There was a small hill about 50 meters behind them. If they could reach it, they might be able to call for help. The humans began moving backward, firing at the aliens to keep them busy. But the Zephyrians were not in a hurry. They walked forward slowly, their energy weapons destroying everything in front of them. Then Sarah heard a sound that made her blood turn cold. It was a soft hissing noise, like gas escaping from a container. She looked around and saw small metal balls rolling across the ground. The balls were releasing green gas that spread quickly through the air. "Gas attack," she yelled. "Hold your breath," but it was too late. The green gas was everywhere. Sarah tried to run, but her legs felt heavy. The world began to spin around her. She could hear her soldiers coughing and falling to the ground. Private Martinez dropped his rifle and fell face first into the purple grass. Sergeant Williams tried to put on his gas mask, but his hands were shaking too much. One by one, Sarah's soldiers collapsed. Sarah felt the gas burning her lungs. Her vision became blurry, and her arms felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. She tried to keep fighting, but her body would not obey her commands. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was a group of Zephyrians walking toward her fallen team. They were not in a hurry. Their job was done. The famous Zephyrian neurotoxin gas had worked perfectly, just like it always did. As Sarah's eyes closed, she could hear the aliens talking in their strange language. Their voices sounded like metal, scraping against stone, even though she could not understand their words. She knew they were celebrating. The Zephyrians had used this gas on hundreds of different alien species across the galaxy. No living thing had ever been able to resist it. Within seconds, it shut down the nervous system of any creature that breathed it in. The victims would stay unconscious for days, completely helpless. Sarah's last thought before the darkness swallowed her was about her team. These were good soldiers, brave men and women who had families waiting for them back on Earth. Now they were all going to die on this alien world. Far from home, the green gas slowly cleared as the morning wind blew it away. The Zephyrian soldiers walked among the fallen humans, checking to make sure they were all unconscious. Their leader, a massive warrior with scars covering his armor, kicked Sarah's rifle away from her still hand. In the alien language, he spoke to his soldiers. His words meant another easy victory. These humans are as weak as all the others. Prepare them for transport. Command will want to question them before the execution. The battle was over. Humans had lost. The Zephyrians began setting up their temporary camp, confident that their prisoners would not wake up for many hours. They had no idea that one of those prisoners was different from any human they had ever encountered. Sarah's eyes opened slowly. The world looked fuzzy at first, like she was looking through water. Her head felt heavy, and her mouth tasted like metal. She tried to remember where she was and what had happened. Then it all came back to her. Patrol, the ambush. The green gas, she was lying on her side in the purple grass. Her hands were tied behind her back with some kind of alien rope that felt warm against her skin. 20 meters away, she could see her soldiers. They were all still unconscious, tied up just like her. Sarah stayed very still and listened. She could hear the Zephyrians talking to each other. Their voices sounded like rocks grinding together. She counted at least 6 different voices, but there might be more. How long had she been out? The sun was still in the same place in the sky, so it could not have been more than an hour or 2. That was strange. During her military training, they had learned about Zephyrian neurotoxin gas. It was supposed to keep victims unconscious for at least 12 hours, sometimes longer. Sarah thought about her childhood on Titan 7, the mining world where she grew up. Her father had worked in the deep mines, digging for rare metals. The whole family had lived in the underground cities where the air was full of metal dust and chemical fumes. Everyone who lived there for more than a few years developed what the doctors called miners' lungs. Their bodies learned to filter out toxins that would kill normal people. Maybe that was why she was awake. Maybe her body was different enough to fight off the alien gas faster than it should have. She opened her eyes just a tiny bit and looked around. The Zephyrians had set up a camp near the rocks where they had hidden during the ambush. She could see 3 of them working on some kind of equipment. It looked like a communication device with a long antenna pointing up at the sky. 2 more aliens were standing guard, but they were not paying much attention. They were talking to each other and looking at something on a small screen. Probably pictures of their victory, Sarah thought. The 6th Zephyrian was the biggest one, clearly the leader. He was examining the human weapons they had captured. He picked up Martinez's rifle and looked at it like it was a toy. Then he threw it aside and made a sound that might have been laughter. Sarah tested the ropes around her wrists. They were tight but not impossible to work with. Aliens had been careless because they thought she would be unconscious for hours. If she moved very slowly and carefully, she might be able to get free. She began working on the ropes, twisting her hands, back and forth in tiny movements. The alien rope was strong, but it had some stretch to it. Little by little, she felt it getting looser. While she worked, she listened to the aliens and watched everything they did. The guards changed positions every few minutes, but they always stood in the same 2 spots. The one with the communication equipment kept pressing buttons and speaking into it, probably trying to contact their main force. The leader walked over to where Johnson was lying, kicked the unconscious soldier in the ribs hard enough to make Johnson's body roll over. But she forced herself to stay calm and keep working on the ropes. After 20 minutes of careful movement, Sarah felt the rope loosen enough for her to slip one hand free. She kept her arms behind her back, so the aliens would not notice anything different. Now she had to plan her next move. Her rifle was 15 meters away, next to the pile of other captured weapons. But even if she could reach it, the bullets would not go through Zephyrian armor. She needed to think of something else. Then she remembered the knife in her boot. It was a small combat blade, only 6 inches long, but the aliens had not found it when they tied her up. If she could get to it without being seen, she would have a weapon. Sarah waited until both guards were looking the other way. Then she very slowly moved her free hand down to her boot. Her fingers found the knife handle and carefully pulled it out. The blade was sharp and felt good in her hand. Now she had to decide what to do next. 6 armed aliens against 1 human with a small knife was not good odds. But Sarah had 2 advantages the aliens did not know about. First, they thought she was unconscious. Second, they had never fought a human who refused to give up. She studied the camp layout again. The communication equipment was the most important target. If she could destroy it, the aliens could not call for help or report their victory. That would give her more time to work. The fuel cell that powered their equipment was visible on the side of the device. Sarah knew from her training that alien power cells were highly explosive if damaged in the right way. 1 knife thrust in the right spot, and the whole thing would blow up. But she would have to get past the guards first. Sarah looked at her unconscious teammates again. Martinez had a wife and baby daughter back on Earth. Johnson was planning to marry his girlfriend when this tour of duty ended. Williams had 3 kids, who thought their dad was a hero. These aliens thought humans were weak because their gas had knocked them out. They thought it was over. They thought they had one. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Sarah tightened her grip on the knife, got ready to move. The Zephyrians had made their first mistake by underestimating humanity. It was going to be their last mistake, too. Sarah waited for the perfect moment to strike. The 2 guards were standing with their backs to her, looking at something on their screen. The leader was still examining human weapons near the rocks. Other 3 aliens were busy with their communication equipment. She moved like a shadow through the purple grass. Years of hunting trips with her father on Titan 7 had taught her how to move without making noise. Every step was careful and planned. The knife felt warm in her hand. The first guard never knew what hit him. Sarah came up behind him and drove, the blade between the plates of his armor, right where the neck met the shoulder. The alien made a small choking sound and fell forward onto his equipment. The screen cracked when he hit it. The second guard turned around when he heard the noise. His yellow eyes went wide when he saw Sarah standing there with blood on her knife. He opened his mouth to shout a warning. But Sarah was already moving. She grabbed a handful of the burning grass from where the energy beams had started a fire and threw it in his face. While he clawed at his eyes, she stabbed him in the throat. He fell backward and did not get up again. Sarah quickly picked up both guards' energy weapons. They were heavier than human guns, but felt good in her hands. She had trained with captured alien weapons before, so she knew how to use them. The aliens by the communication equipment had not noticed anything yet. They were too busy trying to contact their main force. Sarah crept closer, staying low behind rocks and patches of tall grass. When she was close enough, she aimed at the fuel cell on the side of their equipment and fired. The energy beam hit the cell perfectly. There was a bright flash, then a loud explosion that shook the ground. 3 aliens were thrown in different directions by the blast. One of them was not moving. The other 2 were trying to get up, but they looked hurt and confused. Sarah shot them both before they could recover. Now only the leader was left. He was the biggest and strongest of all the aliens, with scars covering his armor. When he heard the explosion, he spun around and saw Sarah standing in the smoke with alien weapons in her hands. He roared something in his own language and charged at her. His energy weapon fired again and again, but Sarah was already rolling to the side. The beams passed over her head and hit the rocks behind her. Sarah came up firing. Her first shot hit his armor and bounced off. Her second shot hit the same spot and cracked the metal. Her third shot went through the crack and burned into his chest. The alien leader stumbled but did not fall. Green blood was leaking from his wound, but he kept coming. He was tough, tougher than any enemy Sarah had ever fought. She backed away, firing as fast as she could. Each shot weakened his armor a little more. But he was getting closer, and she was running out of room to move. The alien swung his massive fist at her head. Sarah ducked, but not fast enough. His knuckles scraped across her forehead and sent her spinning. She hit the ground hard and lost one of her weapons. The leader stood over her, raising his energy weapon for the killing shot. Sarah could see her reflection in his yellow eyes. He was saying something in his language that sounded like gloating, but Sarah was not done yet. She still had her knife in her belt and one energy weapon in her hand. As the alien prepared to fire, she rolled between his legs and stabbed the knife up into his knee joint. He screamed and fell forward. Sarah rolled away and came up shooting. This time she aimed for his head, where the armor was thinner. The energy beams cracked his helmet and found the soft tissue underneath. The alien leader crashed to the ground like a falling tree. Green blood pooled around his head. He was still breathing, but could not move. Sarah stood over him, breathing hard. Her forehead was bleeding where he had hit her, and her whole body ached. But she was alive, and all her enemies were dead or dying. She walked over to where her team was lying. They were still unconscious, but breathing normally. The ropes that held them were easy to cut with her knife. She checked each soldier for injuries and was relieved to find they were all okay. Johnson had a burn mark on his chest, but it was not deep. Martinez had a bruise on his arm from falling. Williams looked like he had not been hurt at all. The others had only minor cuts and scrapes. Sarah gathered all the alien weapons she could carry. There were 6 energy rifles and several power cells. She also found alien food supplies and water containers. Everything might be useful later. Then she heard something that made her heart stop. It was the sound of aircraft engines coming from the direction of the alien landing zone. More Zephyrians were coming, probably to check on their patrol. Sarah looked at her unconscious teammates and made a decision. She could not wake them up or move them by herself, but she could prepare a surprise for the new arrivals. She dragged the alien bodies into positions around the camp to make it look like they were still alive and on guard. From a distance, the new arrivals might not notice anything wrong until it was too late. Sarah hid behind the largest rock with 3 energy weapons and waited. The aircraft sound was getting louder. Soon she would find out how many more aliens she would have to fight. She thought about her father, who had taught her never to give up, no matter how bad things looked. She thought about her teammates, who were counting on her to keep them safe. The Zephyrians had made a big mistake when they attacked her patrol. They thought humans were weak and easy to defeat. Now they were about to learn the truth about what happened when you threatened a human's family. The alien aircraft appeared over the ridge like a giant metal bird. It was bigger than Sarah had expected, with 4 engines and weapons mounted on both sides. The ship moved slowly, scanning the area below. Sarah pressed herself against the rock and watched through a crack. The aircraft circled the camp twice before landing in a clear area 50 meters away. Dust and purple grass flew everywhere as the engines shut down. A door opened on the side of the ship. 8 more Zephyrian soldiers came out, all carrying heavy weapons. They wore different armor than the patrol team, with extra plates and bigger helmets. These were elite troops, Sarah realized. The kind sent when regular soldiers failed to report back. The leader of the new group was even taller than the patrol commander had been. He had silver markings on his armor that probably meant high rank. He barked orders in the alien language, and his soldiers spread out to search the area. Sarah counted the weapons she had taken from the dead patrol. 3 energy rifles, 2 sidearms, and several power cells. Against 8 fresh enemies with heavy weapons, it was not enough. She needed a better plan. The new commander walked toward the camp where Sarah had arranged the dead bodies to look like guards. From her hiding spot, she could see him getting suspicious. He stopped and studied the scene more carefully. Then he saw the green blood staining the ground around his dead soldiers. The commander roared something that sounded like a war cry. All 8 soldiers immediately took combat positions, their weapons ready. They knew now that their patrol had been wiped out, and the enemy was still nearby. Sarah had lost the element of surprise, but she was not going to give up. She waited until 2 of the soldiers came close to her hiding spot, then opened fire with both energy rifles. Her shots caught the first alien in the chest and dropped him instantly. The second one tried to dive for cover, but Sarah's next shot hit him in the leg, fell hard and did not get back up. Now the remaining 6 aliens knew where she was. Energy beams started hitting the rock she was hiding behind, making the stone glow red hot. Pieces of melted rock flew in all directions. Sarah crawled to a different position while the aliens were focused on her old hiding spot. When they realized she had moved, she was already firing from behind a cluster of purple trees. 2 more aliens went down before they could react. One was hit in the head, and his helmet exploded in a shower of metal and sparks. The other took a shot in the shoulder that spun him around and sent him crashing into a boulder. But now Sarah had a new problem. Her unconscious teammates were right in the middle of the battlefield. If she kept fighting from long range, the aliens might start shooting at her soldiers to force her out of hiding. She had to end this fight quickly. Before her team got hurt, Sarah grabbed all the alien weapons she could carry and ran straight at the remaining 4 enemies. It was a crazy move, but sometimes crazy moves worked when the enemy was not expecting them. The aliens were so surprised by her charge that they hesitated for a crucial second. Sarah used that time to dive behind their own aircraft, putting the ship between herself and their weapons. From her new position, she could see the ship's fuel system. Like most alien aircraft, it used highly explosive fuel cells to power the engines. If she could hit them in the right spot, the explosion would take out all the remaining enemies, but she would have to get closer. Sarah ran along the side of the ship, using it as cover. Energy beams followed her, leaving black marks on the metal hull. When she reached the engine section, she could see the main fuel line running along the bottom of the aircraft. She aimed carefully and fired. The energy beam cut through the fuel line like a hot knife through butter. Bright blue fuel started spraying everywhere. The aliens realized what she was trying to do and started running away from their own ship. But Sarah was already firing at the fuel pools on the ground. The explosion was massive. The entire aircraft disappeared in a ball of blue and orange fire that reached up toward the clouds. The shockwave knocked Sarah flat and made her ears ring. When the smoke cleared, she looked around for the remaining aliens. 3 of them had been caught in the explosion and were not moving. The 4th one, the commander with the silver markings, was still alive but badly hurt. Sarah walked over to where he was lying. Half his armor was melted, and green blood covered his face. He looked up at her with his yellow eyes, and she could see fear in them for the first time. He said something in his language that sounded like a question. Sarah did not understand the words, but she knew what he was asking. How had one human defeated his entire force? Sarah knelt down next to him and spoke quietly. "You made a mistake. You thought we were weak because your gas knocked us out. But humans don't stay down. We get back up, and we fight back." The alien commander tried to reach for a weapon, but Sarah was faster. She took his sidearm and all his communication equipment. Then she checked to make sure he could not call for help. Behind her, she heard a wonderful sound. Martinez was coughing and trying to sit up. The gas was finally wearing off her teammates. Captain Martinez called out weakly. "What happened? Where are the aliens?" Sarah looked around at the burning wreckage and alien bodies scattered everywhere. "They learned something new today, Martinez. They learned what happens when you mess with humans." One by one, her soldiers started waking up. Johnson sat up and looked around in confusion. Williams tried to stand, but was still too dizzy from the gas. Sarah helped them to their feet and gave them water from the alien supplies. They were all alive and would be okay. That was what mattered most. But she knew this was not over yet. More aliens would come looking for these 2 groups. And when they did, they would find a very different message than they expected. The alien commander's hand shook as he reached for his emergency communication device. Sarah had missed it when she took his other equipment. It was hidden inside a secret pocket in his armor, designed for exactly this kind of situation. His yellow eyes never left Sarah as she helped her soldiers to their feet. She was busy checking them for injuries and did not notice what he was doing. The commander's fingers found the small device and activated it. The message would be short. The device only had enough power to send basic information across space to the Zephyrian fleet. But sometimes short messages were the most important ones. With his last bit of strength, the commander pressed the transmission button and spoke into the device. His voice was weak, but the words were clear. In the Zephyrian language, he said, "Emergency alert. Human resistance beyond all projections. Neurotoxin ineffective. Species exhibits rapid recovery and extreme combat adaptation. Single human eliminated. 2 full squads. Recommend immediate reclassification to maximum threat level. Avoid direct engagement." Repeat. Avoid direct engagement. The device beeped once to show the message had been sent, then went dark. To the ground and closed his eyes. His duty was done. Sarah heard the beep and spun around. She saw the communication device in the alien's hand and realized what had happened. The dying commander looked at her and made a sound that might have been laughter. "What did you just do?" Sarah demanded. But the alien did not answer. His breathing stopped and his yellow eyes went blank. Sarah picked up the communication device and studied it. The display showed that a message had been transmitted successfully. She cursed under her breath. The aliens now knew what had happened here, and they would tell others. "Captain, what's wrong?" Johnson asked. He was standing now, though he still looked shaky from the gas. "The aliens sent a message before they died," Sarah explained. "They're going to warn their fleet about us." Martinez checked his rifle and found it was still working. "So what do we do now, Captain?" Before Sarah could answer, they all heard a new sound. It was different from the alien aircraft. This time it was human engines. It's coming from the direction of the colony. 3 human dropships appeared over the ridge, flying fast and low. Sarah pulled out her emergency beacon and activated it. The lead ship immediately changed course and headed toward them. The dropships landed near the burning wreckage of the alien aircraft. 30 human soldiers jumped out, weapons ready. Their leader was Colonel Hayes, Sarah's commanding officer. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his face from old battles. "Captain Chen, report," Colonel Hayes said as he walked toward her through the smoke. Sarah stood at attention. "Sir, we were ambushed by Zephyrian forces. They used neurotoxin gas to disable my team. I was able to recover and eliminate all hostiles. 2 squads, total of 14 enemy soldiers." Colonel Hayes looked around at the alien bodies and burning. Wreckage's eyes were wide with surprise. "You did all this yourself, Captain?" "Yes, sir. The gas did not affect me as long as it should have. I believe my physiology from growing up on Titan 7 gave me some resistance." The colonel nodded slowly. 14 Zephyrians. It's more than most human companies have killed in entire campaigns. He looked at the destroyed aircraft. "And you took out their transport too." "Sir, there's something else," Sarah said. "Before he died, their commander sent a message to their fleet. They know what happened here." Colonel Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "Good. Let them know. Let them all know what happens when they attack human colonies." Over the next few hours, more human ships arrived. Medical teams checked. Sarah and her soldiers. Engineers studied the alien weapons and equipment. Intelligence officers examined the bodies and tried to learn more about Zephyrian tactics. Sarah sat on a rock and watched all the activity. She was tired, and the cut on her forehead was starting to hurt. But her team was safe, and that was what mattered. Johnson came over and sat next to her. "Captain, can I ask you something?" "Sure, Johnson. When you were fighting those aliens by yourself, were you scared?" Sarah thought about it. Was terrified. But being scared doesn't matter when your team needs you. Martinez and Williams joined them. They all sat together in silence for a while, watching the human ships come and go. Captain Williams said finally, "Do you think the aliens will come back?" "Maybe," Sarah said. "If they do, they'll be a lot more careful. They won't underestimate us again." Far away in space, the Zephyrian fleet received the commander's final message. The admiral in charge read it 3 times before he believed it. Then he called an emergency meeting of all his officers. According to this report, the admiral told his staff, "A single human female eliminated 14 of our soldiers, including an elite assault team. She recovered from neurotoxin exposure in less than 2 hours and showed combat abilities far beyond our intelligence estimates." The officers looked at each other nervously. Neurotoxin gas had never failed before. No species in the galaxy had ever shown resistance to it. "Sir," one of the officers asked, "what are your orders?" The admiral studied the tactical display showing human space. There were hundreds of human colonies, millions of these strange creatures who refused to stay down when they should. "I'd send a message to High Command," the Admiral said finally. "Recommend. We avoid human space entirely until we understand more about their capabilities, and change their threat classification from Level 3 to Level 9. Level 9 was reserved for the most dangerous species in the galaxy, species that could destroy entire fleets if provoked." Back on New Kepler, Sarah finally got into one of the dropships for the flight back to the colony. As the ship lifted off, she looked down at the battlefield where she had fought for her life and the lives of her team. The purple grass was already growing back around the alien bodies. In a few months, there would be no sign that a battle had happened here, but across the galaxy, the word was spreading. Humans were not the weak species everyone thought they were. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to rest. She had a feeling this was just the beginning. The Zephyrians would be more careful now, but they would not give up. When they came back, humanity would be ready for them. The human race had just announced itself to the galaxy in the strongest way possible. They had shown that they could adapt, survive, and fight back against any threat, and they never, ever stayed down.